Hello, beautiful human, and welcome back to Inner Space. I'm Danielle YS. I've spent my career at the intersection of space science, technology, and the deeper questions of what it means to be human. And what I found is that the most uncharted frontier isn't out there, it's in here. Inner space is where we go within. Because in that inner terrain, beneath the accumulated layers of who you've been told to be and what you've been told to want, is the work you can't not do. The thread woven through every chapter, the dream that keeps beckoning you on, your soul signature. Inner space is where we recover it. Let's explore. Welcome back to Inner Space, everybody. I'm really excited to be here with you, Aga, to dive into another Soul Signature interview. I'm super excited to sit with you, Aga, and find what we find for your Soul Signature.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited and curious, and I don't know, we'll see what we find out. Thank you.
And that's exactly the energy to show up with: curiosity, excitement, and openness to what's going to show up, because that is the magic of these interviews. So just to give you a little overview on this process and for context for everyone who is listening, the Soul Signature interview follows my Infinite Glow model, GLOW. That is a process of gathering all of your expertise, your wisdom over the years from your business, and then letting go of the pieces that no longer serve you and that no longer fit you. Then once we've done that, then we open the gaps that you see in the traditional way of going about doing things, because you are unique and you have so much insight to share. And then once we do that, we weave it all together into your soul signature. So gather, let go, open gaps, weave, glow. Let's take a breath. Aga, I would love to invite you into sharing anything that is coming through right now. Feel free to share what you do and the people that you serve, if that feels like it's calling to you. And we're going to get there. So don't feel like that's what you have to share.
I feel like it started some time ago, and I'm still at the beginning of creating something that I'm called to. It's something that takes me back to what I loved when I was a child. When you go into adulthood, you're losing those parts. And I feel like going through rough times and experiences in my adulthood, I feel like the journey took me back to my childhood. When I said I'm at the beginning, it's like I'm at the beginning of creating business and services for others that will be really rooted in what I loved to do when I was a kid, and that all takes me to, we all have this inner child that we're talking about, but everyone's like, what is this inner child? I would love to support others to return to their inner child, but without this seriousness, because sometimes when we think, go back to your authenticity, go back to yourself. And I feel like sometimes it sounds very serious, deep process, which it is. But on my journey, I found some tools and practices that make it lighter and doesn't have to be so serious.
So let me reflect back what I'm hearing. In your own journey, you've come to this place of going back to your childhood, and specifically those parts that have brought you joy and that you really loved doing, reconnecting with the joyful aspect of your inner child. And now that is what you are wanting to bring into the rest of your work and your business and what you bring into the world, without it being so serious. And Aga, for you, what are the things that did bring you joy as a child?
When I go back to those memories, I spent so much time outside just playing. I grew up in a small town in Poland, and my friends and I, after school and during the breaks from school, summer breaks, we were all the time outside, climbing the trees, playing, riding bikes, and swimming in ponds and in a river. And that was my thing. And we also were creating those kind of like secret groups. Then we had a mission to accomplish, and we were creating journals and putting stuff together. It was all about working together with each other, playing and working and coming up with those ideas and creating something, and all this playfulness. The other thing that I always loved was being in a countryside with my grandpa and just being surrounded with nature and the animals and all this stuff. And I feel like it was so natural to me that I didn't think of it as something special, right? It's just something that when you grow up surrounded by it is natural to you.
So I'm hearing multiple aspects of nature in your childhood, whether it is the trees or whether it is just being outside and having nature available to you and accessible to you. Then there's this fun little sneaky piece of being in secret groups and having this secret search going on, but then also the creativity that's coming from it, bringing in playfulness through the creation experience.
And also, as a child, I was always trying different things. Back then and in Poland, it was different than here. So all this after school programs, creativity and singing, dancing, creating theater, whatever, everything was available and you could just sign up whenever you wanted. So I was trying and exploring a lot of those things. I don't know if it's my personality or, I'm laughing, it's the Pisces maybe, but I never stuck with anything for a very long time to master this, like playing piano or dancing. I never mastered anything, but I always has this curiosity to try stuff.
I used to be a software engineer, and we used to say it's a feature, not a bug, meaning it's something that we decided on and brought into the system on purpose, and it is not a mistake. So your creativity, your Pisces nature, your try everything as a feature, not a bug. This is something that you're building in purposefully. Okay, so tell me, how do these aspects fit into the work that you're doing and bringing into the world now?
So I started a couple years ago and I've done it on a small scale, created enrichment program for kids school, bringing the kids into the nature and connect with nature on a deeper level, but at the same time through playfulness, because I work with kids like different ages. It was from 3rd to 7th grade, and at different age, they are in a different development level. Some kids, you start doing stuff too silly and they will give you this look. It's always adjusting it a little bit to their age, but it was always through playing with nature in, I would say, unstructured way. Because we often have these programs where we tell the kids, you have this and this and that, and you have to do it this and this and that way. I feel like it limits their opportunity to just go with their creative sides. So what we did was we would go on a little hike, play in the nature, did some games, and then I would ask them to pick up some stuff, leaves, sticks, whatever they like. And then we went indoors with those materials that they found in the nature. We would start creating something. And sometimes I would give them an idea, maybe do this or that, or let's try to build the dream catcher or something. I always like to tell them that if something else come up, just do something else, And it was always fun to see what they started creating. And I feel like that's what we all need, a little bit freedom. I understand this idea of giving the direction in some art classes or something to create a specific thing. And that's needed too. But my approach and what I want to offer is giving more freedom and be more open to what comes.
Was there a particular time in your journey where you realized, I don't have enough freedom?
It's interesting now when you ask that. I never thought about it, but yeah, definitely my relationship that I left was all based on control. So when I left that relationship, I think that's what was showing up. I needed the freedom and I didn't have it that much for almost 20 years in that relationship. So it's been a long time. It's interesting that you asked that question because I never thought about it that way.
And how long has it been since that relationship and you starting this work?
8 years since I left that relationship. It's been a long journey for me. I think maybe last 2-3 years when I started feeling this, I myself started feeling better and like I want to create something and I want to share with others, because the first 4 or 5 years was the difficult time in my life when I was dealing with everything else happening in my life, but also trying to figure out who am I. I was talking about the programs with children, but the other part of my work is I would love to support other women who are coming from difficult relationships and help them to find the way to return to who they are truly. Because especially someone who is an empath, I feel we give so much and we absorb so much of others people's emotion. And that's why I feel like empaths, they might end up in difficult unhealthy relationships, because when you give, and at the same time you're like absorbing others people's needs and you providing for them, you lose who you are and what you want. And I feel that's what was happening with me in this relationship. There was this voice, but the voice was like getting put down more and more over the years of being in that relationship, that at some point I stopped listening to it. Yeah, so I think that would be the other part of my services I would like to offer.
Say more about the kind of woman that you would like to work with for that part of your services.
Someone who I would understand most is someone who already left, who understood already that, okay, this relationship is unhealthy for me. And the person left that relationship, but still doesn't know what's next. I often feel, depending on the situation, we are focused on the past and on the other person, what was wrong with that person, that we don't give ourselves the space to focus on ourselves. And through my own experience and myself looking for help and support online and then in a real space, I realized how many people just stay in this victimhood, I would say, phase for way too long. The reason is because we are focusing on the wrong thing, on the wrong person, right? Pointing the finger at the other person. What started changing to me was when I finally stopped pointing the finger and thinking about the other person, but I was like, okay, what's within me that all this thing is happening? It's funny, is everything I feel like on this journey, whatever came across on my road was meant to be and meant to happen. You cannot help someone who doesn't want help or who doesn't want help themselves. So do you want this help? Do you want help yourself? And then if someone would be open to receive the help, the support, then I would love to support that person and guide that person. What helped me was being outdoors and hiking and on my solo hikes and backpacking trips. I feel it's three different ways, right? You can choose this most used trail that you see so many people hiking and it's very straight. On the map is the easiest and most traveled path. The second one is maybe you see there is a path, maybe someone walked that trail some time ago, but I'm not sure. So you can follow that one. And sometimes the trail gets overgrown and you kind of like, okay, where do I go now? Or you can keep bushwhacking, right? And each one of them has a different result and it's a different journey. I feel like for me, at the beginning was like so much of bushwhacking, right? I didn't know anyone who went through the same experience as I did. I tried to discover myself and find a way, and so many bruises, right? And scratches. And then when I started looking for help, that would be the second option when there's a path, right? But I'm not sure sometimes. And that was when I started looking for help, and I worked with one coach and then with a therapist, but I didn't stuck with any of those for a long time. Maybe it was not a good match for me or something. At some point, I was like, okay, with that one therapist, she understood my situation and that's what I needed, someone to understand. But after a while, I realized she still keeps me focusing on the other person instead of working on myself. And then what happened for me, spending this time in nature, just going and connecting with myself. And in my late 40s, I find out the spirituality actually. I grew up in Catholic culture, I would say, because we went to the church and everything, but there was not much talk about spirituality. So I feel like as kids, naturally, we are connected. If we grow up the way I grew up, you are connected to nature and don't even think about it, right? But then through adulthood, you losing this, right? When stuff started shifting in my life, my suffering was coming from not having this connection with God, source, universe, whatever, we all have different idea what it is. And I think spending this solo time in nature brought me back to it. I don't think we ever are disconnected from source. It's just how we feel. We feel disconnected. When I look at it and the way I feel it, it's like we always are connected. It just sometimes we lose the feeling of it. If someone goes through difficult times and reach out for help with a specialist, and I never say that specialists and psychologists and therapists are not needed. They do wonderful work, and there are so many of them who are helping people for sure. It wasn't my experience, but I know there are. But I think it's hard for a person to really benefit from the classical way of therapy if you are not connected, if you don't feel connected with yourself, with source, with God. And that's why I find that maybe that's where my work would be in a service to others. When you combine those two, when you open your heart and you feel more connected inward, then you're more open to the help from the therapist. When I was in those support groups, so many women stayed for years. They went to therapy for years, and it was still hard for them to get out of this victimhood mode. And I think maybe it's also because professional therapists and psychologists, they also limited by regulations. So maybe the spiritual path, I don't actually even know, but maybe they can't even weave it into their practices. But I think that in many cases, it would be beneficial to have both.
What you're saying is so deeply beautiful and coming from your heart. I can feel. And what I'm hearing is even if someone goes to therapy or has a psychiatrist for years and years, if that connection to self with a capital S, whether that's source, God, nature, whatever you want to call it, there's going to be a limit to how far somebody can go or how much growth, evolution that they can accomplish.
I do believe it because I think therapy will go through the mind and through the ego. Lots of therapy goes back to your experiences and what you went through. And it's important because the past events, they shape us, right? Who we are. But what's important, what being in nature and finding this connectedness with nature is bringing you to this present moment, to this now. And now is the only safe place. When we go back into the past, there were beautiful moments happen and there were not so beautiful moments happen. And when we focusing on the past and digging into this, like what had happened to us, why we are here through those negative experiences, doesn't feel good, doesn't feel safe, right? Because you go back through your ego, you experiences the same events over and over again. And when you don't feel safe, it's hard to look forward with positive attitude into the future and see the future in the bright colors when you're not like grounded and regulated. The work with nature as your co-pilot on your journey, that's what brings you to this safe place. And from that safe place, that's when you can benefit from the talk therapy more.
So I'm hearing that it's both this connection with self, spirit, nature, source, as well as the self-regulation that comes from being in the present moment, being mindful and connected to source and nature that are essential foundations for then stepping into the talk-based, the mind-based therapy.
I do believe so. I feel like, especially when someone who went through some traumatic experiences in the past, abuse or control, that person really suffers from self-worth and feels like you don't want to be controlled, but at the same time, over all these years, you got so used to it that that's your safe place. When I finally left this relationship, at the beginning, I was like, I'm free, but what I do with this freedom? Because all I knew was the control, and that was my default mode over the years. And going through this bushwhacking and finding my own path, I understood what the freedom is and what it means to me. But I wish I didn't have to spend that many years, you know? And each one of us has to go through own journey, right? And the way I would love to support someone is not like, hey, there is step 1, 2, and 5 and 10, and you just follow those steps, because it doesn't work that way. We all come from different places and experiences. So I still feel like someone needs to have this freedom to choose where they want to go. How I see my role in this process would be to be the guide and As a mother, I look at my kids and I let them go bushwhacking. I'm like, okay, go get the scratches. But when I see it was like too dangerous, okay, there's a cliff, you call it back, right? That's how I would love to support others. Give them ideas, give them guidance, open the box with different tools, little by little. You don't want to overwhelm a person on that journey, and let them explore. And as I said, a person who is coming from controlled relationships, especially when you give them too much freedom, they don't know what to do with it, because that was me, right? I came, I'm like, I'm so free. And then I like totally got lost. So like little by little opening opportunities for that person to be on that journey. But again, when they go too far, call them back and hey, there is this or that option, which one you choose, but that one is not.
The term controlled freedom came to mind.
It's like the idea of those playgrounds when it's like soft landing everyone, the kids never get scratches. I'm like, no, they have to get those scratches.
Yeah, exactly. They need to learn about it. What would it look like for you to work with somebody who's going through the bushwhacking stage?
On my own journey, the nature was one part, right? Going on a solo time, solitude in nature. But it all began actually with yoga. I ended up in ashram and I spent a month there. And that's, I think, what opened eyes to my spirituality, and was very deep work. So the teachings of yoga connected us with nature. Later on, when I was in my better place, just trying to work on my finances, I started reading about abundance and manifestations, and universal laws came up at me. First, I was just looking at them because of my finances, and I was building up my life, financial situation, and everything. But the more I was reading and digging into it, I'm like, oh my God, it makes so much sense on all the other aspects of my life, on the past, what had happened. But when you are in this survival mode, if you're still in this relationship or you just left that relationship, you don't think about abundance or manifestation, because when you think about manifestation, it's mostly money and abundance. And when you are in this survival mode, you don't think about that stuff. But as I said, over my journey, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. But I didn't see it when I was in a survival mode. So that would be another tool I would offer to the people weaving this yoga teachings and spirituality and connectedness with nature and the universal laws, how they really impact our lives and relationships with everything. And that opened my mind to why I stayed so long in that relationship, or after I left that relationship, why I stayed still too long in this victimhood, because I was focusing on the wrong thing. And the more you focus on that thing, the more you think about it, the more you bring that stuff into your life, right? There is no way for the other energy to come into your life. All the good stuff was happening to me, but I didn't notice it, didn't think about it. Now I'm learning about it and reading, and I look back at my experiences. We all know that being in the nature just raises your vibration, with or without you wanting it, right? If you know that it does, and if you play with it, if you allow it, it can happen sooner, faster, speed up the process, and raising your vibration through spending time in the nature, and then through weaving in teachings from yoga, connecting with your body, with your emotions. All this just takes you out next level of the vibrational energy, and that just helps you to heal sooner.
I love reflecting back what I'm hearing, because oftentimes when we are so deep in it, we say the things and then it goes out of our brains what we said. And when someone says it back to us, it's like, oh, that's pretty damn good. So I'm going to say this back to you. And there's something that came through as you were talking about the vibrations and being able to receive it sooner, and not focusing on the negative energies, but focusing on what's actually here waiting for you to receive. That is very much a parallel back to earlier on in the conversation when you were saying, we need to stop focusing on the other person. Like the people that I want to work with, we have to focus on ourselves. And there might be some negativity there, and there's a lot of love there. We just have to start receiving it. So I wanted to reflect that back, as well as what feels like is coming out as the main tenets or ideas with this work with other women. I'm hearing you talk about nature and the connection to spirit or self as one and the same. And then the universal laws, for those, does that feel like universal laws of abundance or just universal laws in general?
The law of vibration and the law of polarities, what attracts and what you bring into your life. We all need it, right? I remember asking myself, or my friends were like, why all this bad stuff is happening to you? We need it, but like understanding why we need it in our lives and working with nature. I always go and I have a question and I always come back with an answer. Any relationship is always like a mirror, right, to us. But I feel like relationships with another human being always has this filter through our egos, that other person and my own ego. Nature is the mirror without the ego aspect, which helps you to really see the true self, find the answers that are outside of these ideas in our mind about how what should be, could be, whatever. And observing nature and using nature as co-pilot, it's so raw, it is what it is, and it's now. And when you look at nature, nature is not always just beautiful, right? I always was drawn to when you look at a tree and you see they have some of those bumps and scars and stuff like that. And I always say, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful, so unique. And then we look at us humans and we look at our inner scars, right? Whatever it is, and we look at them in negative way, right? When I say we come from unhealthy relationship, all this whole process I went through, I look at my ex-partner in a totally different way. If I didn't work with nature, I probably still would look at him through my human ego and through my own wounds. And I don't know if I could see him the way I see him right now.
I've talked with some of my clients before about when we're in that ego space, we're in a box. And when we can start to see a little bit more about the universal laws and the universal flows of this is happening for a reason. And we can find what that reason is and we can figure that out quickly. We don't have to wait for the lesson to find us. And when we have that perspective, it is literally a higher perspective, and you can see so much more of what's going on, including other people, because we can see where their egos are holding them up as well.
Yes. And it's like when you open your heart to yourself, then it's easier to open your heart to the other person. Either they want it or not, the other person might never change, but I had no impact on that, right? But from my own experience, it's like, I don't even know if my ex-partner has changed really, but the relationship has changed because I feel like I lifted my own vibration and I can look at it differently, and it's different dynamics. There is no negative source, and the source energy, like God, source, universe, this energy always wants good, wants always expand and create, and is only good. But when things don't go the way we wish, or some bad things happen to us, it's not because somehow that dark side energy came to us. It's just more we close our hearts to it. So for my journey was also lots of working on my chakras and doing some more deeper work from yoga practices, connecting with my body and being open. I myself at the beginning, I was like, that's so woo, like the energy and this like chakras and all this, it's so woo. But after years of doing this work on my own and reading about it, there is science behind it. Everything is really backed up with science. It's so interesting, and there's so much information you can find. The way I am created or whatever I function is more experiencing stuff and embodiment. I love reading about the science behind it. I just don't remember.
Your body remembers when you are embodying it, regardless of what your mind is doing. Your body knows the feeling of being connected, and it knows the feeling of not being connected as well.
We can read about things, but if you don't embodiment this stuff, it's not gonna really have effect on your body. So as I said, it might seem a little bit like woohoo, connection with nature and the vibration and all this stuff, but it's just a real thing because I experienced it. I know it works. The way I could support others in this journey is to open the next door for them a little bit sooner. Yes, I know everyone has different timing we all have to go through the next stages, and you can't actually take shortcuts, right? You have to go through those different experiences. But I think that the main thing is not to get stuck on one level too long. Remembering there's the next level you can go to. And I feel like I have so many levels to.
Why we're here in art school.
And there will be times when I will go to 5 levels down again, right? Who knows? Because I went through the journey. The next time something happens, I'm like, okay, I will remember what helped me, and that will take me out of that vibration sooner.
I love that you're saying it that way because it very much is like we can't skip any of the levels and we can move through them faster and faster because we're ready to receive the lessons that are waiting for us rather than going to the same damn level over and over again until we learn a lesson.
When we speak about staying in this level or going back to those levels, we not always stay in a situation that's good for us, but in a situation that it's comfortable and that we used to. But just because it feels comfortable, it doesn't mean it's good for us. It's just how we get over all these years of being in that situation, just the comfort zone. It's hard to talk about it, but I think for me, it took like 3 attempts to leave this relationship. It wasn't a sudden decision. But I know when I was in this support groups, I found people try multiple times and then they go back, because even if they leave after a month, 2, sometimes 6 months, if they don't find the right path to take them out of this situation, they just go back to whatever is comfortable, whatever feels familiar. And it's so much judgment sometimes, like why you didn't leave that relationship sooner or something.
It's more complicated, and relapse is part of the cycle of change. Going back to that status quo is a spiral upwards. And there's more and more time in between, like a week later, 2 months later, 6 months later. There's more time in between as we get more connected with ourselves. We've talked a lot about this part of your business. And my question to you is, where do you feel like you want to focus?
I feel like this is the dearest part of the business I want to create, creating the space and guidance for women to help them, support them on their journey. It's important to me because so many of us have children. And if we as women go through this journey for a prolonged time, the kids follow us, right? So the sooner they can see their parents in a better place, the healthier relationship that the kids have. So I think it's not only for the woman, but in general for the healthy of the communities, our communities, and in general families. I would love to still create events for kids and family friendly nature walks in the nature and creativity classes. This is something I love to do, but that's not my major thing. I just would love to here and there organize something and make these opportunities for kids to connect with nature, and the kids and adults in a different way. The area we live in, Tahoe, and this beautiful outdoors, we are so lucky and so blessed. Our kids and ourselves, we spend so much time in nature. I feel like it's finding the next level of being in nature and experiencing the nature. We do all the sports, biking and skiing and the water sports and everything. And we all appreciate it, but I sometimes feel like, aren't we abusing the nature? When we start having this more deep connection with nature, it's mutual. We not only taking from nature, just exploit the nature for our enjoyment, then we start caring about our environment more. I personally always got upset seeing the trash everywhere, especially after summer when we have so many visitors. And it's something that a few years back, I was always angry and upset. I'm like, why people can come to this beautiful place and how they don't appreciate it. But I think that's the problem, is not that people are inherently bad. We just don't have this connection. We can only care for something to the level we are connected to it. We can come to a beautiful place and be like, oh, it's so beautiful, and take a few pictures and still throw trash just behind us because you don't feel like it's your place. It's like part of you, or you are part of the nature. So I feel like part of my mission, what I want to do with my business, is creating these opportunities for visitors and for local people to find this different level of connectedness so that we can care of our place with more respect and understanding.
The way that you talk about that connection with nature and having an interrelatedness with it by caring for and about it is such a parallel with the women that you want to be working with, where when we don't have the connection to ourselves, we trash it, right? We stay in relationships that aren't good for us, we stay in locations that aren't good for us. We think thoughts that create pollution within ourselves. Such a beautiful parallel.
So beautiful what you said. I mentioned like connection to nature and taking care of nature, but what you're saying, if we feel disconnected from ourselves, we don't take good care of ourselves, right? And then it's hard for us to take good care of our families and children. It's important also for a woman in those situations to learn that it's healthy and it's okay to focus on yourself first. From my own experience, when there was so much suffering and my family going through this whole situation, I wanted to protect my kids. I wanted them to be protected, and it didn't work, right? It took me a couple years, 3-4 years, until I'm like, no, it's not working. You cannot pretend that you are okay and take care of everything else if you are not okay. It's important for the woman to understand. The sooner you take care of yourself, the sooner you feel connected with who you are and what's in your heart, then the sooner you can be there for your family and loved ones.
That in itself is a huge journey of realizing we can put our own oxygen masks on first.
We were talking about my third part of my so my pet services, dog walking and dog adventures, and that's another part of my business idea. And I just started it recently, but the more I do it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's same again, going back to what I loved in my childhood, growing up, being surrounded by animals. We had dogs in my family. In my adulthood, now it's my second dog. So I always had dogs. And it's funny because recently I found this lady from Norway, and she's teaching different way of working with dogs. And it's not like obedience training, is more like understanding the dog's language, so then you can speak the language and communicate with them. It might seem like pet services is totally different business from what I want to create for the nature connection for humans, but it's still part of building this connection with other species in our life. What's beautiful is all these ideas about obedience training with dogs, you don't need all that. When you tune in with the animal, actually, and when you allow the animal to communicate with you through their nature, the relationship can be so much better, and you can achieve in this relationship same result without using the control and using the force and using different type of tools and gear. Right now we have the whole pet business it's built on. Right now, through the pet services, I have this opportunity to be with and spend time with different dogs and learn from them. Maybe in the future I would love to work with animal rescue or something to help people connect with the rescued animals at different level and help the dogs find homes. When I grew up at my home, we had two dogs, and they were kind of aggressive towards other dogs and everything. And now when I look at it, I'm like, I know why. And it's not like they were aggressive. It was all this control that my dad, not knowing better, not that he was a bad person. I love my dad, and he was not knowing better, right? Like putting all this restraining and control on that dogs, that was creating the aggressiveness within them. Now when I'm learning about it, it's like lots of those obedience trainings, they try to control the animal and correct their behavior with tools that we invented, but without really understanding what the animal needs.
It's so, so good. Partially because I just got a puppy and I'm like, the schools of thought I want to follow with her. So this one sounds amazing. And because I heard you say it seems like they're really different, these three parts of my business, and they're not. They're so deeply connected with each other. What you're saying about the way that your childhood dogs were raised, where it is a system of training or obedience that was created by a different species. We didn't take the time to figure out what the needs actually were before moving forward. We just imposed it on them. That speaks so much to our inner nature and the way that, especially women, have been conditioned in society. We've been conditioned by males in a society of patriarchy and controls, and our needs haven't been met because they haven't been asked about, to the point where we don't necessarily even know what our needs are. I see very clearly learning to speak the language of another species like a dog is also a pathway and a mirror to speak a language of ourselves and to really know what we want, and the women that you want to work with and are working with, what they really deeply want, the inner animal that's coming out, the inner wild.
What's coming up for me is really putting together those pieces, and each one of them is part of what is dear for me, what matters to me. When I started digging into the work with dogs and into understanding their behavior, it's so much like relationship we have with humans. And when we say unhealthy relationship, there's always two people, right, in this relationship, and it's not that one person fault, right? So that's why we have to look at ourselves, what's within us, without judgment, like look at ourselves without this judgment, become curious about why this relationship went that way, what's within me that I can work on. When we try to control the relationship, just like with the animals, they lose their language. What I learned is when they stop using their language, when we limit the animal from interacting with other animals, like my dad didn't let the dogs to play with other dogs. So when they have less and less opportunities to communicate with other animals, with other dogs, they stop using their language. That's what happened with us humans, right? We start feeling disconnected, and that's the same happens with the dogs. They start feeling disconnected, and that's when they start being reactive, right? And that's when we start seeing the dogs those behaviors that we say, aggressive, unhealthy behaviors, but they don't come from because the dog is bad. It's because they don't have this opportunity to express themselves and to communicate with others, to use their language. And it's so related with those relationships. When we enter a relationship with someone controlling, we also start losing the language that's within us. When you're a child, you express everything, right? You cry and scream and laugh and you don't care. And then when we grow up, we start to tone down. And that's what happens in those unhealthy relationships. And we start losing the language, the voice. And it takes time once you make the decision and you leave this relationship. It doesn't happen right away. It takes time to find your voice and to start finding who you are and your authentic self. I was hiding. I think like last 2-3 years, I started finally feeling this need to go out and meet people. At the beginning, I was hiding because so many things were shut down within myself. So it's important for us to work on ourselves and open up. And that's why it's so important to me that women understand that the sooner you stop focusing on the other person, let them go through their own journey, and just focus on yourself.
With the women that you want to work with, do you want them to be at the place in their journey where they already know that it would be beneficial for them to focus on themselves? Or do you want to be educating that is important? Let what just moved through you move. We'll meet you in the next part. Dear Explorer, thank you for journeying into inner space today. If something in this conversation stirred something in you, like a long forgotten song from childhood, let that be data, because your body knows before your mind does. Subscribe to Inner Space to keep exploring, and if someone came to mind while you were listening, share this episode with them, because we're not meant to navigate these depths alone. I'm Danielle YS, signing off with love from the edge of the unknown.